Hello everybody, Groundback here, and today I have a tier list which will be my predictions on all of the Pokemon that I've added to the Generation Jumble, as well as most of the other Pokemon that you would either expect to see in Gen 1 OU, or just have some sort of niche or viability, or anything really. We have a lot of Pokemon to go over, and this is more so just gonna be my predictions at the start, because obviously, um, the format only just started, so I would be a fool to act like I definitively know what's going to be best for everybody. But that's also what's going to make this interesting. Just looking at what we have here and deciding, or making a video later on, once the season's over, on how good my predictions were. Now we have like most of the tiers you expect for viability. I don't have like extra for like D, F, or E, because I'm not even sure if the actual Gen 1 viabilities go that far. But we have they're color coded for the most part. So we have a whole bunch of like the S tiers, like the top tiers, A tier. We go all the way to E tier, then we just have the completely unusable. For the Pokemon that even if they had some niche in Gen 1, or if they're casual bait, there's just no chance they can do anything. So let's just get started. Starting off with Venusaur. And I do not have any hopes for Venusaur. It has the poison typing, which means it could resist Sceptile more with Leaf Blade. And it can probably take an unboosted Earthquake or Hyper Beam decently well. But I just don't really have hopes for it. I don't think it would be unusable. I'd probably put it in E tier. Just it just supports Sceptile in every single way. And even Victory Bell would probably be a lot better. So I just don't see any point to really using it for the most part. Charizard, on the other hand, I think it's a little bit better. Because with Sceptile and Metagross in the format, and with Great Tusk having a little special, and Annihilate also having low kick and submission, its fire flying typing is okay. But at the same time, Zapdos and Regieleki are everywhere. Starmie is the most popular lead, so its electric weakness also really holds it back. It would probably be a worse Moltres, but at the same time, it does have Sword Stance, so that does allow it to stand apart from Moltres, where it can potentially boost its attack and be just a terrifying mix attacker. So I'm gonna put it in D tier. I think that's fair. I'm not sure how much it'll be used. For the most part, it'll still be casual bait. But at the very least, I'm gonna say it won't be anywhere near as bad here as it would be in regular Gen 1. Meanwhile, Blastoise is just completely unusable. There is not a single thing that Blastoise does that other water types in this format can't. It's pure water, which doesn't really help you. You just get one shot by Sceptile's Leaf Blade. Not to mention other Pokemon like Lapras or Gyarados have interesting secondary typings. Starmie is just a beast. And yeah, we have Starmie here. Even looks something like Poliwrath with Amnesia and Submission actually can hold a niche for its own. So there's just no reason to use Blastoise. It has absolutely nothing to offer. And then we have Sandslash. And Sandslash is a Sword Stance user, which is good, but it's just overall inferior to the other ground types here. It doesn't have the normal resist that Rhydon has. Doesn't have the valuable flying type, making it immune to Earthquake like Gliscor. And it doesn't have the raw power that Great Tusk has, since it has Hit-Run Rush. So I'm gonna put Sandslash in F tier. I just don't see it having any sort of niche whatsoever. And it just won't be that good, in all honesty. Now, Persian. Persian's a weird one. It hits hard, but I just don't think that's enough. Because we already have both Tauros and Hisuian Zoroark in this format, which means that, you already have two fast normal types that crit a lot. So you don't need 3. And with Hisuian Zoroark and Gengar and Annihilape in the format, there's a lot more normal immunities too. Which means that Persian just becomes even worse. So what does it do? Nothing really, if I'm being honest with you. It's not like terrible. It can still hit pretty hard. I'll put it in C-, but it would be like the absolute worst in C-, in my opinion. Now, Poliwrath. I haven't seen anyone like experiment with Poliwrath yet, but I do think it's very interesting. Because normal types, as a whole, have a huge buff here. Because along with the big 3, you also have like Porygon Z, and you have like Dunsparce. Dunsparce in particular is basically just a better Snorlax, because it also has Amnesia. So I think Poliwrath having both Amnesia and Submission is actually like worth looking into. It could help you fight against the other normal types. Not to mention, unlike other fighting types like Annihilape, since it does, have Amnesia and it has like water and ice moves, it can actually take on Hisuian Zoroark. The matchup doesn't become like completely one-sided for it. So maybe I'm being optimistic, but I think I'm gonna put Poliwrath in C tier. I think it'll be pretty decent, in all honesty. Alakazam is definitely going to be good, but the question is how good will it be? I'm gonna say A- tier, because it's fast. Like, don't get me wrong, it has a speed type with Sceptile. But now we just have a lot more Pokemon that just hit it really hard. Now I know the Sceptile's Leaf Blade two-shot it, but we also have like more Amnesia users. We have Amnesialax, Dunsparce. We have like very good Psychic Resists like Skarmory and Metagross. And we have a Dark type in Hydreigon. So there is a lot more things that check or even completely counter Alakazam now. Doesn't mean that it's bad. It's still a like very fast crit machine with Recover and Thunder Wave, but it's not as dominant as it was in regular Gen 1. And then Machamp is just bad. Like, there's way better fire types to be using. F tier is probably better, because there's at least something you can do with it. But, for the most part, like, if you want a fighting type, just use Terrakion or Annihilape. And most likely just Terrakion, since Terrakion's a lot faster. And, like, Double Kick is, like, terrifying if it actually gets the crit. And with Terrakion's 108 speed, it can crit a decent amount of the time. So that just leaves nothing with Machamp to do, really. Victory Bell, I just don't see cooking at all. But I see it being a little bit better than Venusaur. With Swords Dance, Wrap, and then like the dual statuses. It's just a worth like Executor for the most part. But I put it in D. Or no, F tier. Like Razor Leaf, you're not gonna ever bother using Razor Leaf when Sceptile has Leaf Blade. And if you want a really good grass resist, you would either use Moltres or Executor. So it has like nothing really to do. And then Tentacruel. Tentacruel I've been decently surprised with, but I'm happy seeing it used a lot. And it actually seems to be doing perfect for like this format now. It's fast and OHKOs all of the water types. It has Wrap, and most importantly, it has high special with a poison typing, meaning it takes Sceptile's Leaf Blade neutrally. So Tentacruel I think will be able to make a name for himself, and I have no problem putting him in C+ tier. I think he's actually going to be pretty good, and that makes me really excited, because I've always wanted to use Tentacruel. Slowbro, I am less optimistic for, because in general, this meta hits a lot harder, and there's a lot more Pokemon that crit. You have Sceptile, you have Regieleki, you have Great Tusk with Headlong Rush. So even though, theoretically, Slowbro is still a monster, it also still has to deal with, like, Dunsparce too, with its Amnesia. So I'm going to put it in C tier. Because if you can get it off, it's going to do really well, but chances are it's going to really struggle. And just in this meta particularly, you have way less chances to actually get away with something like Amnesia. Too many fast Pokemon that can just like completely take you out. Oyster, I imagine, would be pretty good. I'll put it in A tier, because its rock weakness doesn't really matter that much, It completely scares out all 3 of the normal types. It has really good defense, which helps it against like physical Dunsparce or Snorlax. Also helps you take on what's it called, Terrakion. And you also like scare Hydreigon as well. So not bad in all honesty. Or actually, I think A plus tiers actually makes even more sense. I just see it being really good. Now Gengar. There is a lot more ground types here, so it's kind of hard to say where Gengar would be. I'm gonna go with B plus tier. He's still the fastest sweep setter. He has Explosion, and moves like Psychic become a little bit more better. Not to mention, while he's weak to ground, the grass resistance it has from Poison can actually be pretty relevant. It could help him out a lot. So, not bad by any means. Mostly just okay. Executor, I do see as being pretty good. I will put him in S- tier. Because look at most of the new Pokemon that are being added, that are like making a big name for themselves. You have Great Tusk, you have a Sceptile, Regieleki. All of these hit very hard, but they're all resisted by the grass type. So Executor does a great job actually resisting those and being able to fight back. And while Hydreigon's in the format, that's annoying, and while Porygon Z hits with a devastating Blizzard, Executor, like, not only can it status them, but it can also just, like, hit them with Double Edge, or just use your teammates to take over. So overall, Executor is doing pretty good, and I would be really shocked to see it be worse. Maybe even be put in S tier instead of S-, but I'm not sure about that. Hitmonlee, I'm gonna put in E tier. It has a very consistent fighting move in a high jump kick, but it's just not worth it, really. Not really. It's just way too weak, especially. Not to mention there's even more ghost types now, so it just like gets countered even more. It's not completely unusable. With so many more normal types, it can see use, but it is not worth it in the slightest. And then Rhydon has been making a huge name for himself. No doubt about it, he is definitely S tier. With many more electric types now, and just more normal types, his like rock ground typing is even more relevant. And while grass types and water types are also more popular as a whole, he's still managing to hang on and make a big name for himself. Which is really impressive if you ask me. Not sure how he's managing to do it, but he's definitely doing it. And then Chansey, we're gonna put in S tier. I know this is like a really hot take, but I do feel like, or maybe Chansey. Actually, no, Chansey is still one of the big 3. It's really competitive actually. Actually, no, I'm putting him back in S tier. You'll see why later. But right now, there's just such a huge competition for the actual big 3. Because now we have a lot of normal types, all of which are in some ways very similar to the original big 3. Hisuian, Zoroark, and Tauros have the exact same attack and speed, but Hisuian Zoroark has the ghost typing. Dunsparce and Snorlax play pretty much identically, but Dunsparce has like higher speed, or just like mostly higher stats other than like I think attack and HP. And while Chansey is definitely the better Porygon Z, both are still Thunder Wave setters with high special that spam recovery. So it's competitive, but I don't know. I might change my mind later. And Starmie is also S tier. Starmie is by far the best lead in the game. Even with Lead Sceptile, it's not that bad. There's just a lot of things just have a hard time answering Starmie. And unlike in regular Gen 1, you don't have to be as scared about preserving it, because it's not as dangerous as a late game cleaner as it usually is. But that just makes it even more better as a lead, in my opinion. And then Jinx is good, but how good are we talking? I'm gonna say A tier. It's also just another pretty good lead. And with the most popular leads at the moment being Starmie and Sceptile, it really doesn't mind either one of those. Paralysis is annoying, sure, but I think it would very much rather just put the Starmie to sleep. And then with Sceptile, they're just forced to switch out. So that just puts you like in a really good position. So nothing too crazy. Keep in mind this meta does hit a lot harder, so it isn't as good in regular Gen 1, in my opinion, but still pretty good. And then Pinsir is just another Pokemon that's completely unviable. There's more ghost types now. There's just more Pokemon that just have really good stab options. Pinsir has like nothing to offer. And while its Sword Stance and Bind are cool, there's no reason why you would ever consider using that. So, Pinsir, I'm sorry, you're really cool, but you're definitely just not going to be used in the Generation Jumble Season 1. And then Tauros, obviously, is still going to be one of the big three. It's really hard to actually beat him. He hits really hard, both physically and specially, has a crazy crit rate. And while for the first day for usage, both Sceptile and Porygon Z had more usage than him, I think that's just from new toy syndrome for the most part, and people not knowing how to really counter them yet. Personally, I think I have a pretty good idea about how to counter Sceptile, and I think Tauros is just more consistent and has more options, because he can use like the standard set, Earthquake, Hyper Beam, Blizzard, and Body Slam, or you can use like Thunderbolt, Fire Blast, Stomp, whatever you want for the most part. Tauros, I'm still gonna say, is gonna be the best Pokemon in Gen 1 OU, even with all these other Pokemon being added. But you are free to disagree with me if you want. And Gyarados. Gyarados is also pretty decent. I'll put him in C- tier. He hits pretty decently for the special. Not to mention, like, he has a ground immunity. And with how many more ground types are in the format, especially Great Tusk, it's definitely worth considering. And, what was I gonna say? Well, it's mostly just the fact that he's a water type that's immune to ground. Especially like Great Tusk's Headlong Rush, which is by far the strongest attack or physical attack in the game. It means that you can't really switch into like your Starmie or even your Slowbro, which makes Gyarados all the more useful. And Lapras. I really like Lapras. I don't think it's gonna be like too crazy. This is supposed to be B-. There we go. But I do think it can like make a pretty good name for itself. It's tanky, it has Ice Stab to scare out Sceptile, it has Sing, Confuse Ray. Overall, I think it just has a lot of options. And I don't think it cares that much about Great Tusk, like Head-On Rush. You probably don't switch into it because of there being a big fear of a crit. But it could definitely take it on 1v1, even with a crit, assuming Lapras is at full HP. So I think it would be fine. I'm not sure if it would be super great, but I can see it being good. And Jolteon. This is awkward. I think Jolteon would be probably C or no. I'm gonna go with B- too. It's definitely worse than both Regieleki and worse than Zapdos. But it could still be interesting. Because what it has that those two don't is it's a pure electric type, so it takes electric moves neutrally, which is already pretty good. But then, it has a little bit better move pool than Regieleki. But Double Kick is a little bit better in this format since there's more normal types. But at the same time, the other two are just a lot better. But Jolteon in of itself does a good job counting the other two. Since Regieleki isn't really tanky, in fact it's a glass cannon, it's not really a great answer to fight Zapdos 1v1. At the very least, you can't just switch it in. But Jolteon can do that for both Regieleki and Zapdos. So overall, like, okay. I think he'd be okay, but he definitely struggles a lot more now, especially with there being way more ground types. And then Porygon regular is, there's no reason to use it. It is just a unevolved Pokemon. And with Porygon Z in the format, it just does what regular Porygon does, but a lot better. So no reason to even consider it. And then Kabutops. The rock typing is good for normal resist. And theoretically, Hydro Pump can threaten the rock types. Or not the rock types, the ground types. But I don't feel too confident about it. I guess I would be a fool just to act like it wouldn't do anything. I'll put it in C- tier. It's probably the best Pokemon in C- tier. but I don't see anyone actually being like gutsy enough to use it. If you want to though, like go ahead, like surprise me. But I don't know. It's just you need to be a really skilled trainer to actually make complete types work. Because there's a lot of Pokemon that threaten it both specially and physically. Because even ignoring the ground types, you still have like Zapdos, Regieleki, and Sceptile. Actually, when I put it like that, I think it should just go in D tier instead. Better than Charizard, but it doesn't have much going for it. In Aerodactyl, we are just putting it unusable. It has a super bad move pool, but unlike Skarmory or Heracross, where the moves it has are somewhat usable, the ones it has aren't really. It only really has like Double Edge and Fire Blast as attacking moves, which is just like hot garbage. And then Snorlax. Very hot take, but I still think Snorlax is going to be S tier. Because it really is just a worse Dunsparce. And while granted, like having two Snorlaxes essentially is amazing and overpowered, one of them has to be better than the other. And I think Dunsparce being a little bit faster and just having like just doing a better job using its coverage because it has higher special, just overall would just be better for the format. So I'm sorry if you disagree with me. If you think the big three would still be the big three, either comment down below as to why, or just join the Generation Jumble yourself to prove it. Keep in mind, like, just join the server and we would love to have you. So next off, we have Articuno. I'm gonna say Articuno is B tier. Like, it has a really good defensive typing for Gen 1. It's weak to Electric, which is a huge problem. But other than that, it's immune to the ground type attacks. It can hit really hard with Blizzard. Also resists Grass. So I just don't see much going wrong for it for the most part. Seems pretty good. Seems like it can hit hard. So I'm not sure what else you can react for it, to be honest. And then Zapdos, I'm gonna say is A+ tier. It's just a monster. And in some ways, with the flying typing and with Sceptile, it gets even better. If this thing gets an agility once your team's like very weak, it can just easily revenge kill everything. And it's bulkier than Regieleki. And while Regieleki has explosion and moves like Body Slam and Hyper Beam, Zapdos I feel like is just a better mix attacker. So I almost gonna put in S tier, but I think A tier is much more realistic. And then Moltres, I expect Moltres to see a big resurgence. So I'm actually gonna put in A tier, maybe even above Jinx. Because Fire is just a very, very useful type to have in this meta. Even better with its flying typing and having a quad resistance to grass. Because even if you ignore Sceptile, you have Metagross. And believe me, we're going to get on the Metagross. But you also have Heracross. You have like Annihilate. You just have a lot of really strong Pokemon that Fire Blast does a lot of damage against. And keep in mind, in Gen 1 OU, a Fire Blast is a 30% chance to burn. So with all the normal types too, you suddenly like all of them fear your Fire Blast and don't want to get burned. Not to mention, Fire Spin's really good. So yeah, I think A tier is gonna be like, I think that's what Moltres is gonna be at. You can disagree with me if you want, but that's what I'm calling. And then Dragonite, I don't see Dragonite doing anything. I'm gonna be real. Agility Wrap is just a gimmick. And this is something that most Pokemon don't care too much about. I feel like Dragonite is just like a sitting duck for the most part. Nothing really fears it too much. And I could be like dead wrong about this, but I just feel like Dragonite just has nothing to offer for the most part. And then Skarmory. Skarmory has a truly abysmal move pool, but I think in spite of that, it's still going to be pretty good. I think its steel typing and just high defense means that it's like the best pivot to go into. Not to mention with some Pokemon like Sceptile and Heracross being popular, I think that means that like Skarmory can even like threaten a lot of stuff with like drill peck. And while toxic isn't great, I think at the same time, outside of like with your lead matchups, you have a lot less opportunities to spam status in general. So I feel like it won't be as inconsequential. Not to mention with how hard some of these Pokemon hit, like Sceptile and Great Tusk, I think even just getting a little bit of chip damage in can help a lot, in my opinion at least. And then Heracross, I think will probably be A minus, because it hits incredibly hard. There's very few things in the game that can take a Mega Horn, but at the same time, you have Rhydon, Dunsparce, and Great Tusk, who all have a 101 HP subs, which is just very annoying for Heracross because it needs 2 of them. And then you have Moltres, Zapdos, and Great Tusk, which resist Heracross's like Mega Horn. And I'm gonna be real, Counter's very bad on Heracross, but it has no choice but to use it. So Heracross essentially only has 3 moves it can actually use. Unless you would rather get rid of Counter for Rest, which I do think is the optimal thing to do. But it probably won't be good, if I'm being completely honest here. Or maybe, I don't know. I guess it just depends. But I think keeping your Heracross safe while it recovers is really dangerous. And I have a lot of hope for Smeargle, but it's also very hard because there's a lot of Pokemon in this format that just hit so hard. And crits are also just so common. So even though I really like Smeargle, I do see it struggling. But I do feel like in the right hands, Smeargle can be a really big threat. And it can accomplish so much for your team. In my opinion at least. And then Regieleki, I'm just gonna put in A+ tier. I'm not sure if it's better than Zapdos. It's really hard to tell at the moment. But it's a huge threat that you have to take account for. It, like, only needs to worry about Rhydon for the most part, as even Gliscor and Great Tusk fear a critical explosion. And it's just super fast, which is a 31% crit rate. So, like, everything is endangered to it for the most part, other than Rhydon. But also, because of just how much you can shut it down with just a, like, resist or a immunity, it means it will never be overpowered, at least not on its own. With Sceptile as its partner, it's pretty much just an unstoppable duo. But even then, that might not even be true. We'll have to, like, keep playing more Generation Jumble to see just how good Regieleki actually is. Very good chance that when I eventually make a new tiers at the end of the season, it will in fact be a S tier Pokemon. Annihilate, I think it's okay. I think it does better than what most people think, because not only is Explosion, like, immunity still very valuable, especially with, like, you know, Regieleki in the format, but even Submission is actually pretty good here, because there's no more normal types, and Annihilate has a pretty decent crit rate, so it has the potential to just one-shot Pokemon like Porygon Z, which is a huge, you know, like a huge benefit. Granted, it's still hard to get in, but once you do get it in, it can hit pretty hard. I think it's also a Pokemon with a 101 substitute, meaning they can take multiple like seismic tosses and nightshades. So it's also just a pretty good counter to what's it called? Heracross. Yeah. And then Dunsparce, I'm gonna say it's also one of the big 3, because it is a better Snorlax for the most part. I'm not sure if it'll be banned, but I do think I would rather put a Dunsparce on my team rather than like Snorlax if I had to choose one of them, because it already has pretty good HP. Not as big as Snorlax, but like, you know, I think it's still like the 3rd biggest in the game. It has higher speed, like has a little bit better special, which makes Amnesia just a little bit better. And overall, like, it might be new toy syndrome, but I feel like Dunsparce is one of the better Pokemon in this format, even if you don't see it as often as like Chansey. But you might wait as more time goes on. And then Great Tusk. I'm going to put Great Tusk in A- tier, I think, because it hits so incredibly hard. It has the strongest like physical attack in the game, not to mention a very decent crit rate. So it is something that you can't really ignore. But at the same time, it doesn't actually resist normal, It's very weak specially, weak to water, grass, and psychic, and flying. So it has a lot of problems, but I feel like just its raw power more than makes up for it. And probably just the second best ground type in the game. And then Sceptile, no doubt about it. Definitely S tier. I don't think as good as the ones up here, but it's really the most popular Pokemon used right now, tied with Porygon Z. It like you can just crit everything with Leaf Blade, and there's like very little that can actually switch into it. It also had Sword Stance and Earthquake, and once it gets the Sword Stance up, it gets Hyper Beam also just becomes terrifying. I'm gonna be real, I do think Lead Sceptile will eventually die out, because even though it does good against Starmie, your Sceptile is almost always going to be better by using it as a Revenge Killer. Never set up Sword Stance and try to use Hyper Beam on Pokemon that already have full HP, because most likely it's just not going to work out. Keep in mind, Sceptile still has a base 85 attack, so it's nothing too crazy. But there's definitely no doubt that it's one of the best Pokemon in the game, and right now, the meta is definitely revolving around it. But it's also because the meta is revolving around it that I don't think Sceptile will be the strongest Pokemon in the game. And then Metagross, yeah, I'm calling that this guy's gonna get banned. He needs to go. He is causing way too much of a problem. Offensively and defensively, he is just a monster. He has the exact same special as Jinx, has Stab Psychic, has Thunder Punch and Ice Punch, has Agility, Earthquake, Rest, freaking Explosion. Not to mention, he is a freaking Steel Psychic type. The best defensive type in the game, and gives him just a stupid amount of resistances. He tanks everything. Even Earthquakes, he can tank, and then he can just heal for the rest. He doesn't care about Paralysis, because he'll just rest. He has Explosion, which will probably crit and kill everything. Metagross has no weaknesses, and you have no idea how it's going to beat you until you see its moveset. And it can use anything it wants. That either just cover any weaknesses your team has, or just be your team's main win con. There is no answers to it, and it needs to get banned 100%. The meta is not fine as long as it's here. And then Gliscor. Gliscor is probably the worst of the ground types. And at first I was going to say it would be like a C tier Pokemon. But honestly, I tried using it on a stall team, and it almost worked out, in all honesty. When Gliscor goes for an agility, it suddenly becomes a huge threat. So late game, once the Pokemon's, any Pokemon's teams are paralyzed or they're at half health, Gliscor is actually really good at switching in, and then just setting up. And having 2 immunities, plus an immunity to Thunder Wave, makes it even better. Where, if your opponent has no idea you're using it, you can, very quickly just get killed, and there's nothing they can make it really do. So, better than I thought, in all honesty. And then Porygon Z is another S tier. I'll put it... Actually, yeah. Right now it has really high viability. It hits just as hard as Chansey, but has an even better recovery move and, well, recover. Base 90 speed means it has a really great crit rate and outspeeds a lot of other things. And it has bulk beam coverage. Even though it only has 85 attack, it does have stab with normal. So Hyper Beam still hits decently hard. So overall, there's just nothing really to complain about with Porygon Z. It also has Thunder Wave, which also makes it just a decent lead as well. So Thunder Wave, Ice Beam, Blizzard, Recover is probably its most optimal moveset. And that moveset itself hits really hard. And Terrakion. There is more fighting types now. So I'm going to put it in B tier. Because even though its Double Kick hits hard on normal types, and Rock Slide, Sword Stance, Hyper Beam in of themselves do decent damage, being a rock type, while good for the normal resist, also makes it a lot harder with all the ground types and grass types in the format. Makes it a lot harder for him to switch in. Not to mention a lot of the normal types, like Tauros and Snorlax, still use Earthquake anyways. So, really good. Definitely better than decent. But it needs to, something else needs to happen before it can really move into A tier. But even then, being one of the best Pokemon Or actually, I think it just is the best Pokemon in B tier, in all honesty. And that's definitely nothing to sneeze at. And then Hisuian Zoroark, I'm going to say is the last member of the big three. I'll probably put it above, what's it called? A Dunsparce. It has the exact same attack and speed as Tauros, a much better typing, but also is way more frail. At first, I was thinking that Hisuian Zoroark might need to get banned with Metagross, but now I think that isn't really necessary. I feel like Hisuian Zoroark will be fine. It'll be very good, but I don't think it's gonna like take over the meta or have everything built around it. And I do think even with its normal immunity, Tauros will be the better Pokemon because it is bulkier and has more coverage. Because yeah, Zoroark does have Psychic and Fire Blast, but Tauros has that plus like Earthquake and Blizzard. So I don't know. I don't know which one of them will be better, but I'm still gonna lean my money towards it being Tauros. Golem, it's just a worse Rhydon, but it has Explosion. I'm gonna probably put in the best Pokemon in D tier, but I don't really see many reasons to use it. Because with how valuable the ground typing is, do you really want to explode your Golem? You probably don't, for the most part. So I just don't see any reason to really bother with that. And Dodrio, I think I'm also going to put in D tier. Maybe C minus tier if I'm being generous. But it's really fast, and having a flying type really helps against the ground types and Sceptile. Especially Great Tusk and Sceptile. You just thread a lot with Drill Peck. And with Executor getting better, that in turn makes Dodrio better. Not to mention its normal typing makes it more useful for the other normals, meaning you're immune to Body Slam paralysis. I don't think it's going to be popular, but I could see people using it every once in a while. And whenever they do use it, they see a good amount of success. Hypno, I'm going to put in C+ tier as well. It's a bulkier, like, it's a bulkier Alakazam for the most part, while also having dual status, like Executor. But while your Paralysis move is better, your Sweep move is worse. It seems like it'll be alright. I'm not sure how much it'll be used, but considering it is, like, tankier than, like, Alakazam, I could see that give it a pretty decent niche. Kingler, it hits hard, but I don't know if it hits hard enough. I'll probably put it in the best of C- tier. It, like, it has Crab Hammer, and it has Sword Stance, so it can become a very dangerous late game cleaner. But I think the meta now just has a lot better late game cleaners, if I'm being honest. So, I don't really see, I don't know. Like, maybe, like, it would be decent, but I just don't see the meta working out for it. And Kangaskhan is a decent normal, but we already have a lot of them. And even though Kangaskhan is traditionally better than Dodrio, both in underused and with niches in OU, like, we have so many other normal types now that I just don't think there's any reason to even consider it. And the only reason you consider Dodrio is because of its flying typing. Just a pure normal type doesn't have much it can really do. So, even though it's not a bad Pokemon, and if you were to use it, you would probably see a little bit of success with it, I just don't see it being used at all, for the most part. And last but not least, we have Hydreigon. You are the only dark type in the game, which is incredibly useful. The grass and fire resist and water resist and electric resist, actually all of its resistances are really good. It just has a really good defensive typing. It hits hard with Fire Blast, has decent damage with Surf, and it has physical moves too. But to be honest, Chansey isn't even seen on every single team now. And you have like Thunder Wave, which also just really helps Hydreigon. I see it being incredibly good. Not the best Pokemon. Hell, I'm not even sure if I would really call Hydreigon a monster. But we can't deny just how good it actually is. And there we go. This is my tier list for my prediction on all of the Pokemon for the first season of the Generation Jumble. Do you agree with me? do you think like my tier list is wrong? I have this tier list on my Discord server. So on both the tier list channel, Generation Jump on Pokemon, you'll find it. So be sure to join or just make your own tier list for yourself. Let me know how good you think all these Pokemon will be. By far the best one though, or the biggest question is all these S tier Pokemon. If you agree with this ranking. But that's about it. Thank you all for watching. This is Groundback. And until next time, I look forward to hearing from you.